It's my distinct pleasure to address you on this topic, Agbioscience, leveraging new technologies to solve world WEFE problems. You first wonder, what does Agbioscience mean? Well, just looking at the word itself, you see biology in the middle. It's placed in between agriculture and science. So what we're saying here is just the word itself tells us, when you think of your traditional thinking of what agriculture is, picking up weeds and rocks and getting the soil, planting, cropping, milking cows, etc., etc. And then think of your image of science, maybe a lab. And what do? You create, you have intellectual curiosity. So it's a way then to bridge the two. What happens in agriculture, what happens in science. There is a very pivotal role of biology in agriculture and science in the modern day. Just think of Honeycrisp apple. Think of new breeds of animals. Think of GMO, non-GMO. Look at how biology has driven what happens in science and in agriculture these days. So how can we leverage the powerful tool we have in biology and agriculture, science, if we overlay it with technology, especially with thinking computing technology, the power that's behind computers? Can we do something on a world scale to solve some of WEFE problems? You say, WEFE? What is WEFE? All right, let's define WEFE. This is my acronym for the 4 or 5 resources that are most important to us. And they are linked by agriculture. We just heard it talk about water. Water is one of those resources that if we're not careful, we're going to run out of them, or it's going to be very difficult to supply enough water for the world. Energy is another, food is the other, and the third one is environment. Why am I treating environment as a resource? Well, we probably understand water is a resource. You understand food is necessary. And the environment, how is that a resource? Maybe if we think more of the environment as a resource, we'll be more of a caretaker of our environment. What we do, while you may not use up the environment, but you could protect it or you could do damage to it. So if we view it as a resource, perhaps we'll be more conscious of how we use the environment. So the acronym WEFE then stands for water, energy, food, and environment. And all these, amazingly, are linked by agriculture. For instance, can you guess how much water it would take to get a single walnut and an almond nut? 6 gallons of water. And guess what? That's being done in California, where it's really not that easy to get water, despite a lot of scientific ways to conserve and upgrade the way they practice agriculture. So what's the problem, though? Here is the problem. By 2050, what's going to happen to the world population? We'll have about 9 billion people. In fact, United Nations said we'll get there maybe 13 years earlier, 2037, that we would have 9 billion people. So that's 7 more billion people that we have to supply water for. We've got to feed. We have to make sure they don't pollute the environment. We have to make sure that they have enough energy. What's energy? Well, from physics, it's that quantity that allows us to work, to do something. Maybe us, human, we need energy. And maybe machines, you need some energy for them to work. So all those 4, like I said, are linked. But because our population is going to keep growing, it makes it more imperative that we do something to help solve some of those problems. So what is the idea? Interesting. There is a statistic that keeps up with the number of people in the world. There are so many smartphones. I have 2 here. And they are both mine. My wife has 1. My daughter has 3. And maybe in the audience, you have at least 1 phone. Not only that, if you notice in this slide, you notice the increase in the number of smartphones in what we traditionally call the third world or the developing world. Notice these numbers are in millions. In Africa, that number will grow by 150 million between 2013 and 2017. 150 million more phones. So can you think, do you see where I'm going? Is there a way we can leverage the pervasiveness of cell phones, mobile devices, to help solve some of the world's problems in water, energy, food, and environment usage? Perhaps there is. Maybe you have some ideas that could crop up or maybe come up after this conversation. Or maybe we talk amongst ourselves and we may be able to get to some of those solutions. Now, by the way, just out of curiosity, we know there are many cars. Do you think there are as many cars as mobile devices? No. The estimate by the US publication Auto World says we'll hit 2 billion cars in 2035. By that time, we've exceeded the number of cars and people together with mobile phones. So if we could just do something where people could use their mobile devices to maybe conserve water, energy, food, and preserve our environment, we may be up to something good. But historically, it's been possible. For instance, in 2013, The Atlantic magazine composed a panel of about 12 scientists, technology historians, and entrepreneurs, brought them all together and say, come up with the 50 most impactful innovations in the last, since the wheel was invented. And they said, think about those innovations that would have done most to shape the nature of modern life. We're talking about 6,000 years since the wheel. They came up with 50, and I'll tell you, 6 out of those 50 relate to agriculture. Nitrogen fixation was one of them. The green revolution, the moldboard plow, the cotton gin, scientific plant breeding, and the number 50 is the combine harvester. So historically, science and technology has helped us a lot, and many of these things have happened in the US. For instance, even the National Academy of Engineering, they list the 10 most important inventions in the 20th century. So now we talked about 6,000 years, now let's come back to about 100 years. Here is what they list. They list agricultural mechanization as one of them. You will probably agree that this has revolutionized the way we practice agriculture in the US. Can mobile devices do the same thing? Can we use mobile devices in the most remotest part of Africa? I grew up in Africa, and I remember that time when I left about 32 or 33 years ago. To make a phone call, you have to go to a store, a business place, and walk a mile or a mile and a half and use rotary phone. That's to make local calls. To receive international calls, you have to time it and go to that store and wait for hours to receive a call. But today, I could call right now, and Nigeria will pick up. It doesn't matter. A lot of people have the phone. So can we use this technology? Definitely. And what's the history of agriculture, science, and mechanization technology in the more recent one? Here is the slide. In 1966, we started using electronic monitoring devices to allow farmers to actually crop more efficiently. So we don't have to use maybe 12 gallons of water for one single nut of walnut or almond. How about in 1994, farmers began using global positioning system. We're really introducing technology into the way we practice agriculture. And just 2 years ago, we've seen a pervasiveness of agricultural robotics. They use robotics to milk. Even in the area around here, you see a lot of things that we use robotics for. Weed control, monitoring soil conditions, etc. But global problems, local solutions. What are we doing locally? The combine harvester, I said, was one of those 10 or 50 best inventions. You know how much one of these will cost? Pardon? $600,000. This one will cost $600,000. How many of us can afford $600,000 to buy a combine? How many in Africa or in India or in Latin America will be able to practice farming using that? But if they can have a mobile device, for instance, that could, instead of making it this huge, machine, perhaps we could have little combines that we can operate with a mobile device. Apart from that, there's a lot of data that comes in when we use the more modern technology. Who's going to process all those data? What do we need to make that happen locally? So here is what we're doing. We have some barriers. They say, an English proverb says, necessity is the mother of invention. So what are the barriers there in the world? Awareness and engagement. People need to know the extent of the problems. People need to be aware, just like we just heard about how dirty water could be converted. People need to know what the challenges are, locally and abroad. For instance, even here, the distribution of materials sometimes would hamper the ability of others to get it. So we'll let some things rot, or we'll just waste sweet corn because we can't transport it in time enough. How about in remote parts of Africa, in India, in Latin America? Definitely they need to solve preservation problems. So we have a vision that here in Austin, we will have a global center for agriculture and food science innovation that would incorporate leading technology and help people think and bring people together, like crowdsourcing, where people with the intelligence, smart minds can come together with entrepreneurs and see what we could do to come up with ways to solve some of those world problems, WEFE problems, as I call it. So, do you know some digital natives? Do you know some non-risk averse investors and sponsors? Do you know people that are ready to help solve some of these problems? Yes, we want you to join us in this journey. So we are proposing an ag center that's going to start with us having precision agriculture, food science, information technology and robotics, and I will have entrepreneurship built into it. This is different from a research or university environment. We want people that could act quickly, that can go from the classroom, the lab, to the land, that could kind of democratize this, make it liberal, and send it all without thinking there is a certain patent or so that I have to worry about so much and protect it. And we have embarked on a solution. If you've been around, you've seen 2 summits, or you've heard about 2 ag summits that we hosted here at the Hormel Historic Home. We had a good partnership that we enjoyed with the Hormel Foundation, and we hired a new director. We started thinking about how we can solve these problems with the college. We had a new director who has a food science background, a great scientist herself. She has a few patents to her name, and she's done some work in the food industry. And we introduced 5 new programs in line with our Minnesota State Colleges and University System mission to use creative energy and to use our ingenuity and creativity to solve some of the problems around us, meet the education needs of the people of Minnesota so that we can achieve and enhance their quality of life and improve the economic vitality. And there are entrepreneurship opportunities for you. Usually, we think that we could just do this for service. That's good if we could do it for that. But there is also opportunity to make money and to distribute that to be able to use the money for solving other problems. For instance, we found out that you could have a demonstration lab and a functioning farm. We could have ag-based mobile programming. We could have some people that will know how to handle all the data, the big data, that will translate them and help the farmers. Not here alone, but across the world. Biobusiness and safety on the farm, smart irrigation systems, for instance, infield sensors, solar dryers. And these days, they're using unmanned area vehicles. They would kind of mount cameras on those. They'll take a lot of data, and they need to process that so that we can use water, energy, and production of food and environment better. So, what's the conclusion? Right in the middle of those 4 circles is, I think, agriculture that uses a lot of water, consumes a lot of energy, could damage our environment, but we could also protect the environment. And also, we have to eat. We've got to feed all these people. and we could do it efficiently by taking advantage of the ubiquitous cell phones. And you know, some people have actually got on the bandwagon. While I was doing the research for this, I found out there is a company that was started by 3 college ladies, young women, in St. Olaf. Just a month and a half ago, they won the Main Cup Student Division Runners-Up. Has anybody heard of Red Food? Yeah. They came up with some kind of app that would link the food product producers with the restaurants so that they can do this, what I'm talking about, real quick without wastage. RED, restaurants eat direct food, red food. And you could kind of Google and see how they came up with that. That's what we're talking about. We could have millennials, we could have young minds, bright minds come together at this center with good instructors, with entrepreneurs to help us to see what we can do to train others locally and across the world. And then they take it to where they might have come, learning how to use mobile devices. I would close by saying it's a great idea. Technology is an asset. And don't underestimate your own individual contribution. Crowdsourcing, as I said. For example, have you ever gone to a gas station and there is an automatic shut-off? And the automatic shut-off kicks and says, avoid spills. Do not pollute the environment. When that was started, you might have thought, what's this going to do? Just me? But when 5 billion people around the world do that same thing, it protects the environment. So the little you could do in the local area, in the community, could go 1,000 miles if indeed we put our heads together to try to solve some of the world's WEFE problems. Thank you.